Disclaimer, I will be reading off of a script in this video. It was just, there's a lot of compartments going on, so I needed to make sure it was somewhat organised. So apologies if you do see me looking down. I promise you everything I'm saying is genuine, even if it does seem a bit robotic when I'm delivering it. I promise it is my own thoughts and everything. It's just a bit more structured. So without further ado, let's go. So faces, we have them, we see them, and I also really like to draw them. Sometimes they take time and a really delicate hand until I'm actually happy with it, whereas other times I could spend hours and hours and it would still look a bit wonky, which is fine. It's fine if that happens.
But I like how mine's a little off-center. It's got wabi-sabi.
I do have one question though. Is there a right way to draw faces? See, I've pretty much stuck to the exact same drawing technique since I started to draw. A simple circle with 2 lines, and then I build from there. Don't get me wrong, I've picked up more knowledge as I've drawn over the years and got a degree, but I'm still constantly learning new tips. Because of this, I started to realise that maybe that base technique that I got from a random manga tutorial book is probably not the best to still be using. So I've decided to scour the internet for people's favourite drawing techniques, just in terms of drawing faces and portraits, that kind of thing, and try them out for myself and to see if there really is a correct way to construct and draw faces. And by right way, I really just mean finding a technique that's comfortable for myself as well as improving my own art capabilities. I really don't believe there's actually a wrong way to draw a face or a wrong technique to choose. It really depends on your art style and what you're looking for. Without further ado, hello, I'm Nerys. I'm an artist and an animator, and I adore making videos about art and games. And today I will be helping myself as well as you in finding a new technique to use in art. Let's go. Starting off, we have the first and biggest name you'll probably see or hear of if you're starting to research art techniques, and that is the Andrew Loomis method. Andrew Loomis was a fine art commercial artist based in Chicago, Illinois. From what I gathered, he illustrated advertisements for magazines and other media in a realistic fine art style. One of the things he is still very well known for are his instructional art books, which shaped a generation of artists and are also said to be a very good resource for beginners. How do I know this guy? Well, I don't know him personally. I found out about him in these Morpho anatomy books by Michael Loricella. I really hope I'm saying that right. I did Google it a while ago. I forgot how to pronounce it. One of them, The Face, Head and Neck, mentions the Andrew Loomis technique and goes on to explain it. Now, this is definitely an issue on my part, but I, for the life of me, could not digest this technique or information at all, at no fault of the author. Felt like my attempt at this technique was hindering my skills rather than helping them improve, as I was so focused on following the technique and its measurements exactly that I couldn't understand how it left room to include the wide variety of proportions that people have. Found out later that the Loomis book actually does have a section on this, and we'll slightly touch on that later, but yeah, go look at the book if you want to see that. It goes into like crazy detail. Regardless, I went back and watched some videos to hopefully try and understand the technique a bit better. Speaking of, this video would not be possible without any of the other creators out there that I watch, so everything I used to make this video, including articles and videos, will all be linked in the description. So please, I implore you, please go check them all out. If you would like to do more research, you can use the articles. And if you would like to look at the techniques in a bit more depth, I watched videos that spent 20-30 minutes talking about one technique. So if you would like to look at them in more depth, the links will be in the description. And don't worry, it will be very nicely organized. So without further ado, onto the technique. To start off, here is the most basic structure of the method. First, you must draw a circle. Then add another circle that's 2/3 of the size. This adds the side planes, which helps us to place the next guidelines as well as keep the facial proportions at an accurate size. Too big or too small, and the features would also become too big or too small. We then add crosshairs in both circles. This helps to place the features later on. Now we can add guidelines for the hairline, the brows, and the end of the nose using the top, middle, and bottom lines of the smaller circle. We then also need to add a chin guideline, which is the same spacing as the other two, so it's as simple as measuring and adding. Finally, we can sketch and add the basic shapes and features such as the eyes, nose, ears, etc, etc. Ta-da! All done! I'm sure you totally have it memorized already, right? Right? Nah, I'm joking. I do not expect you to have this memorized already or even understand what's going on. I'm going to quickly run through it once again with different angles, and I'll simplify it even more. But do not worry, when I was first studying this technique, I also had to pause and go through the videos I was watching like frame by frame. So please you don't have to have it understood already. So don't worry about that, please. So quickly, you've got circle, smaller circle, crosshairs, guidelines, chin line, and add features. As you can see, this is the basic default Andrew Loomis method. And I must stress, this is the most simplified version of the technique. As I touched on earlier, the book goes into a lot more detail and splits the faces up into even smaller grids. I did not want to do that for this video. That's way too complicated for me. So I have kept it to the most well-known and most basic version of the technique, just to make it a lot easier for everybody and myself. Unfortunately, this technique will result in similar looking faces, and this is because the guidelines and the spacing are the same every single time. The most you could do is change the features, such as the eyes, the nose, the ears. You could have a pointier nose, you could have bigger lips, but the spacing would always stay the same. If you did want to use this method to draw a variety of different people, which I'm sure everybody would, we're not all drawing the same person over and over again, you have to measure and change the guidelines manually. This is the part I would get stuck on, so let's fix that. Here are some references with the Loomis spacing guidelines applied. As you can see, multiple elements no longer follow the equal spacing of the default technique. Instead, they are stretched to fit the unique faces. This is really all you have to change when drawing a varied base from scratch. You just have to take note and measure what the unique distances are between the features and change your Loomis guidelines accordingly. To finish off this section, I'll do just that with this reference. Okay, so here is the Andrew Loomis speed paint section. So as you can see, I start by tracing the technique over the reference to try and get like a grasp of how big that second circle needs to be. I immediately fail on this first attempt, as you can see. Very too squish, not good. The circle is way too small. So I started again. This is just a rough base. I've turned the opacity down, as you can see here, and actually go over this again with the face itself. I start marking where the features need to be, using the Loomis guidelines of where the brow line is and where the nose line is in regards to the ear and on the second circle. Yeah, so just placing those two lines for the nose actually really helped like the rest of the piece come together. But yeah, it was quite easy. It's kind of hard for me to explain what I'm doing because my typical drawing style, especially with references, is kind of just doing it. I've always been like that since I started to draw. Like I could just kind of trace the picture without needing too much construction underneath. But I am constantly looking back at my reference and looking back at what the Loomis guidelines are saying and like what the spacing is. So in a second, you will actually see me see that the ear is way too close to the rest of the face. That side plane is like way too skinny. You can see in the reference, her ear is a lot further back and mine is like way too up close. This is a common issue I have in my art. It's a mistake I make quite a lot. My brain, like, again, I say I don't use construction lines. I obviously need to because I do make common mistakes like that. Where things are just either way too big, like you saw earlier, her mouth was a lot bigger than it was supposed to be, and now I made it smaller. And then, yeah, I think in a second I'll notice her ears too close. But overall, like the Loomis, it helped a lot having a reference of measurement, not even just the reference itself, like having a guideline like the Loomis method to realize, like, so you do your base sketch and then you can ask yourself, like, okay, is the ear in the bottom, like, quarter of that circle roughly? Is the nose in line with the bottom ear, the brow line and the ear line? Like you have guidelines to kind of go off of in your head to make sure that your piece is accurate. Oh, and because the Andrew Loomis technique was so quick and easy to do and was so lovely to do, I ended up colouring this one in a little bit. I was just having a lot of fun with it. I think the actual study itself probably took about like the sketching portion took about 20 minutes, and then I spent another 20 minutes colouring it in and making it look a bit prettier because it was just so nice and easy to use. So I am 100% going to be doing the Loomis technique again. I already have in some of my art, which I think I'll show later. But yeah, I highly, highly recommend this technique. Here's the final thing. Definitely still has some mistakes. It's not a perfect side-by-side comparison to the reference image by far. However, I think it's a really good starting point for you to want to study references and faces. So yeah, without further ado, let's go on to the next section. I say that a lot in the video, don't I? I say without further ado a lot. Let's just go. Let's just go. This then concludes the Andrew Loomis section. I'll leave my thoughts and opinions until the very end of the video where I'm going to rank these techniques. For now, let's just move on and go on to the second technique, the Frank Reilly abstraction. Frank Joseph Reilly was a highly respected artist as well as teacher based in America. Much like Andrew Loomis, he too also illustrated for advertisements and other media with leading magazines and had a very long list of freelance clients. Fun fact, his classes were actually the most popular and attended classes for a consistent 35 years. He was said to be a meticulous perfectionist, as he believed that art was somewhat of a science, saying that you needed to understand the fundamental principles and apply them with consistency to become a great artist. The Reilly abstraction method, also known as Reilly rhythms, originated from the man himself, believe it or not, but he never actually wrote it down himself. Instead, all we have are his students' notes to go off of, which is why you may see multiple variations and ways to do the method. Now, when I started to watch videos about this method and research into it, I can't lie, I got immediately overwhelmed. It seemed as though the simple version of this technique was comparable to the most complicated version of the Andrew Loomis method. It had the face divided into thirds like Loomis, but then went further and divided it into more fifths and quarters and even more thirds. And then I found out it had over 20 steps, and it was a lot. It was also exactly what I didn't like about the Loomis method before I went and researched more about it, so I did try to go in with an open mind. As I watched more, it did become clear that it wasn't supposed to be a restricted method. Instead, it was supposed to help with gestural drawing as well as anatomical accuracy, and it all depended on how you manipulated these rhythms. Now, what are rhythms? Well, I'll show you. From my understanding, the rhythm lines are lines which connect one anatomical feature to another in a fluid way. For example, on the face, you can connect the inner eye to the top of the temple. It also seems like they are present in full body gestural drawings, but I will not be diving into that into this video. Instead, I will now take you through a step-by-step of a standard forward-facing Reilly head. I've tried to condense it, but please prepare yourself, for it is a lot. A quick thank you to Leanne Creates. Her video presented this step-by-step in the clearest possible way, and it helped me so much in writing this section and getting a grasp of what the hell I was supposed to do when trying to do this technique. So a big thank you to her. If you want to see this technique in more detail, please go check out her video. It's actually also her favorite drawing technique as of when she recorded that video. So she's a bit more positive and, you know, she really enjoys it. So please go check that out. First, let's do the base. So draw a circle with a vertical and horizontal line cutting through the middle. Cut off the sides and divide the new spaces into fifths. Add a square on the inside and more guides that divide the face vertically into thirds, which then allow you to add a fourth section, much like with the Loomis method. Add the jaw, then split the second quarter into thirds and add a line on the top divide line. This is now the bottom of the eyes. We then add the nose width by using two of the middle fifth divisions, which allow us to add the base of the nose. So as you can see, this technique does bear resemblance to the Andrew Loomis methods, especially with the face being divided into thirds and how you add the jaw. But it does include some extra measurements such as the nose width and proper eye placement, which I think can definitely be helpful for anyone wanting to be that bit more accurate. So with the construction base finished, we can now start adding the rhythm lines. To start, we'll add the nose bridge, which goes from the brow line down to the base of the nose. Next, the side of the nose bridges from the bottom eye line and down to the edges of the nose base. Next, we will add the muzzles, but first split the bottom of the face into thirds. Using the bottom divider line you just made, add the inner muzzle, which is an oval. Starting at the bottom of the eye line, add the outer muzzle, another big oval that ends at the jaw. You can now add the chin oval and make it big enough so that it slightly cuts into the inner muzzle. Using the top third divider line, we can add the mouth line. Next are the cheekbones. The base cheekbone goes from the brow line to the nose line, ending on the outer muzzle. The bottom cheekbone stretches out from the end of the mouth line and meets the bottom eye line, while the top cheekbone also starts at the mouth line but goes above the original cheekbone line and meets it at the brow line. We then add the temples by starting at the top of the box corners and drawing through the fifth guidelines ending at the bottom eye line. Round off the head by making an arc between the brow and the hair point. The eye arc connects to the bottom of the temple line on both sides and meets in an arc at the middle. The inner eye corner arc connects to the nose width line and where the brow and temple line connects. This is a small line. Above lies the forehead muscle, which is another arc that spans between the temple lines, but above the brow line. The final step is the forehead oval, which starts at the bottom eye line and goes up to the hairline. Whew. Ta-da! We're done! So easy, right? So simple. Totally not like have a bajillion lines in it. No, oh my god. Don't worry if you're lost, because so am I. Now, you may be thinking, how can I possibly use this in a sketch? This is way too many lines. How is this helpful? Etc, etc. I completely understand and I am with you there. While this may look aesthetically appealing when it's all done and nice, it is a lot. I'm going to presume that typically these lines/rhythms would be memorized by seasoned artists so that rather than having to draw them all, they can just instinctively do the measurements and do the most important lines for their sketch so they're not looking like that. So following this theory, I decided to sketch the lines I thought were the most important on some references to see how they can be applied to other angles. So as you can see, I decided to skip the construction base and instead just went straight in with the rhythm lines. After doing these, I can say I quite like the outer muzzle, the cheekbones, and the nose width lines. I feel like these personally are quite nice and satisfying ones to remember and to try utilize in the future, because they actually correlate to features of the face that you can draw and add into your own artworks. It was surprisingly easy to apply these lines onto other angles, which I was very thankful for. I much prefer adding them loosely rather than being painstakingly accurate when placing them down. I think this has helped my subconscious artist brain pick up on some of the patterns and links between the features of the face, which I'm sure will help in the future. So to finish off this Reilly section, I will now try and sketch a face from scratch using the Reilly method. Okay, so here's the Reilly speed paint. So as you can see here, I'm starting off with a very similar base to the Loomis method. That's because the Reilly rhythms, like the construction base we went over, is very similar to the Loomis one, but instead I add the nose width and I think what else, and then the chin. I can't quite remember. I think I mainly just added the nose width and the nose base because that's what I quite liked about the Reilly construction and how it added that. I then put some Reilly rhythms, as you can see. I know it went very quickly, I'm so sorry, but you can see the lower opacity blue lines. That's my rhythms that I decided to add. So basically what I did is you can see in the top left there, I have the full Reilly rhythms face that I made. And then I was picking and choosing kind of what rhythm lines to add that I thought would help me. And from what I could tell from the speed paint, I added the muzzle, one of the muzzles, added the chin oval, I added the cheekbones, I added this line that goes from the inner, I think this is the big muzzle, I don't remember, but it's like the inner eye down the way. So I kind of added whatever lines I thought would help me do this study. And help me kind of add those 3D planes to the face and just capture the general likeness. And it went really well. I think it's a really good way to study the Reilly technique so you don't get overwhelmed, because starting a sketch from scratch, I was going to say sketch from sketch, starting a sketch from scratch, but adding all of those base construction lines, I think is a bit much, because by the time you've drawn all them, you've then got to rub them all out. And then, I don't know, I think it's a bit much and a bit overwhelming. So I think doing the Reilly construction base, which should be pretty simple because it's very similar to Loomis, and then picking and choosing what rhythm lines you want to add on top and that would benefit you, I think that's a really great way to study it in my opinion, and I found it really fun. As you can see again, I didn't capture the likeness like exactly, it's not an exact replica of the reference, but I think it captures the likeness of the reference enough that this study can be considered a success. The technique definitely helped. I'm very... what's the word? Like, I really enjoyed adding those extra lines at the cheekbone and the muzzle and all that. I think, yeah, I'm a fan of adding the slight, like, certain rhythm lines. I think it did help improve my art a lot. And I think if you use the combination of the Andrew Loomis method base, or just the Reilly construction base, but if you use either or and then add specific lines you want to add on top, I think you have a really good recipe there for a great drawing, like, setup for your artworks. But yeah, anyway, I'll leave my actual, like, final thoughts for the end of the video. I believe now is the Asaro section, so let's go do that. So on to the Asaro head method. This one is slightly different as it doesn't have a step-by-step to follow. Instead, it's a study tool that artists use to learn about the planes of the face. The head was created by John Asaro, who actually studied with Frank Reilly at the Art Students League in New York. Much like Loomis and Reilly, Asaro also had a career in commercial art, but left it for fine art. And it's in this new career that he developed the planes of the head, aka the Asaro head. Since we don't have a step-by-step, let's instead look at the head model itself. The head's main focus is dividing the face into clear planes. Now, what are planes? Well, if you run your fingers across your face, a plane will exist wherever your finger changes direction. The nose is probably the easiest place to see this, as you go from the nose bridge to the side of the nose and the cheekbones, all of which are separate planes. One of my favourite parts of the Asaro head, especially on this model by Fabiano, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I'm so sorry if I'm not, are the eyes. On this one side, you can clearly see the socket that the eye lives in and how it looks at different angles, which I absolutely love. It's features such as this one and others that I try to use in my own art, but without a proper reference, it can be extremely difficult to visualise it. And that's where the Asaro head comes in. Now, the model isn't just useful for learning the planes of the face, you can also use it as a great tool for helping with learning lighting. Take this model by William Nguyen. Again, I'm so sorry if that's wrong. You can see how the light clearly settles on the different planes of the face, helping people understand the true depth of the face and how to apply lighting in different scenarios. Like anything with art, it always helps if you can visualize it in a 3D space. And the Asaro head does an amazing job at helping us understand that. Just like with the last two methods, I traced over some faces using the Asaro head as reference. I went a bit overboard in some areas, but in general, applying the planes really helps you to distinguish the different sides of the face, much like with the Reilly method, but rather than loose, it's a bit more angular. As someone who visualizes objects and people in shapes like this, I'm a huge fan of the Asaro head at a first glance. I would not dissect a face or any object into this many shapes, that would be a bit absurd, but I will be incorporating aspects of this technique in my own artwork, as well as this study, which we shall go on to now. So let's do that. Okay, so now we're on to the Asaro head speed paint. So as you can see, this study is already differing quite greatly from the other two because there's no construction base. I did this fully without any construction just to keep it, so it was just the Asaro head that I was using. And because of this, I did run into some issues. There were some sizing issues. As you can see right here, the nose is too small. But overall, I was able to structure a face quite well with just thinking about the shapes and the planes. I probably found this a bit easier and like a bit less daunting because I draw like this anyway. Like if I have a reference and I'm just copying it, I do typically just go straight into it. Like I said at the very start of the video, the most I do is like a circle with the two lines and that's it. Like I don't have any other construction, any other guidelines, like that's it. And then I just go straight into all the shapes. Which is fine, but it leads to a lot of mistakes such as the nose and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think the final result turned out quite geometric and still a bit like 3D, which is good. However, the Asaro head definitely does not help you with the proportions and the sizing bit of things. So I think what you would need to do is you would need to combine this with one of the other two techniques that have that construction base just to make sure all the features and stuff are where they're supposed to be and that they're the right size, like that kind of thing. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Definitely the least accurate of all the speed paints in the studies, but it was still very fun and I learned a good chunk. So without further ado, I believe the next section is the final thoughts. So let's go do that. Now that we've seen and tried all techniques, it's time to rank them. So in last place, I think I'll have to put the Reilly method. I see benefits of this method. It being last does not mean it sucks. It just means that I like it the least. And also I think it's least. I'm not ranking it on just my personal likes. I'm also ranking it based on how much I think it would help beginner artists as well as seasoned artists improve their technique. So there's multiple factors. It's not just based on what I like, but yeah, I also don't like it very much. As I said before, I like some of the rhythm lines that the method introduces, such as the muzzle, the temple, and the nose bridges. Bridges or the nose width. I quite like that one. So I will be keeping aspects of this technique in mind for my future artworks, but I just think for this method to work effectively, similar to what Reilly said, you would need to practice it to death. So much so that it would become second nature to add the construction that it provides, which may scare off some people from attempting or trying to learn it. Like me. I think overall this technique is a bit more advanced and may scare away new artists rather than help them learn the foundations. It has its advantages and its merits, but I found it to be quite overwhelming and too confusing to commit every rhythm line into my artworks. My tip would be to either learn certain rhythm lines that you really like I'm doing, or just a few of the construction and a few of the rhythm to get started in learning this method. In second place, we have the Asaro head. I adore this study tool. Like I said before, whenever I visualize people or objects or like I'm observing them, I always simplify them down to the simplest shapes. So I really like this I was going to say method. I really like this tool, method, whatever you want to call it. It's in second place though, just because it, again, like the Reilly method, doesn't help beginner artists to get a grasp on how to construct a head from scratch. Instead, it helps already experienced artists enhance their technique further with the planes and the lighting. I also think that at a first glance, it can be overwhelming, much like the Reilly method, but I do implore people to try both this and the Reilly at least once if they feel comfortable to do so, just because it never hurts to get that bit more knowledge or experience in, does it? Overall, this is my personal favourite technique, so it should be in first. In my personal ranking, it's first. But for new artists, I believe it's one to study a bit later on, which is why it's in second place. So in first place, that leaves, tiny drum roll, tiny drum roll, tiny drum roll, the Andrew Loomis method. Woo, woo, confetti, explosions. I don't know how I'm going to put an edit, but woo. Before I started delving into these techniques, I was certain that either the Reilly or the Asaro method would be ranked first in this video. One, because I loved the way they both looked and I loved the construction it seemed to add to faces. And second, because I had such an awful time with the Loomis method. However, after doing the research and putting the time in to make this video and explore these techniques, I can confidently say that I believe the Andrew Loomis method is a solid technique for new and seasoned artists to help understand / refine the basic construction of a head, and this is for many reasons. Number 1, it is versatile. The technique can easily change its proportions for each new face, and once practiced, I believe this technique could quickly become second nature to most artists, beginner or not. Number 2 is the skill ceiling. I slightly touched on this, but the Loomis method goes into much more detail in the book, meaning that once you have the base technique down, you can build on your skills further, whereas the other 2 methods don't do this. The Loomis method also did get bonus points for actually being written down in a book by the original guy. Sorry, Reilly, you should have done that, mate. Number 3 is the simplicity. When I was prepping the references and assets to make the tutorial sections for this video, the Loomis method was by far the simplest and most time efficient method to study. It's so easy to lay over references and to do quick studies, and thanks to the simplicity, I believe it will help greatly not scare off new artists. Overall, I believe that all of these techniques have their advantages in helping artists refine their skills further, so please don't be discouraged to try any of them, even if I've said I don't like it. Please go give them a shot at least once. They've helped me and I'm sure they'll help you too. I've already started to use a mix of them in my art recently and it's helped greatly. So I highly encourage you to try them out. Now, there were other techniques that I wanted to use in this video, but I was on a time constraint, so I had to leave them out. It was just 2 other ones, but it's still a shame I didn't manage to get them done in time. So if this video was helpful and you would like to see more, please let me know. I'm happy to do a sequel video of those 2 I missed, or if you have any techniques that you use or have heard of and you would like me to try them before you try them out, just let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do so. I love learning new things and expanding my skill set and art skills, so yeah, just comment it and let me know. Other than that, I hope this helped you as much as it helped me. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more art and maybe game content, we'll see. And that's it. Bye!